I'm pretty sure my dead ex-boyfriend's brother is still scowling at me. I casually lean to the right, peeking past the shoulders of everyone standing in front of me, to where Go Gutierrez is standing with his 3 sisters, parents, and Sophia. They're all receiving condolences from those who attended Marco's funeral and then came back to his parents' mini mansion in Oak Park for a final gathering after the service. This is a sad day. Probably the saddest day ever for the family Marco left behind when he died in that car accident. But, yep, Go is still glaring at me over his heavy black beard, his eyes little more than slits behind his black framed glasses. And as if sensing his agitation, Sophia, Marco's girlfriend at the time of his death, follows the direction of his gaze. Oh, crap. My former foster sister was sweet back when we lived together, and she's even nicer now. She's been almost unfailingly kind to me, even after what happened 12 years ago. But when she sees me standing in the receiving line, her eyes widen with frank alarm beneath the netting of her fashionable radiator hat. And she gives me, her dead boyfriend's ex, a look that very clearly asks, "What are you doing here?" Tough, tough, tough. I'm so tough. Everyone who's ever met me knows that. If not because I refuse to let anyone, especially men, intimidate me, then definitely because I have enough silver hardware in my face and ears to let anyone passing by me know I'm not afraid of needles, and I don't care what anyone thinks. But Sophia's shocked stare makes my insides all squirmy. She's oh so appropriate in her black cap sleeve dress and tasteful chignon. Fits right in with Marco's family. Such a pretty Catholic girl. You could have easily mistaken her for one of Marco's sisters or even Go's wife. While I, the heavily pierced black girl with the dramatically long gray with black ombre weave shaved on one side, stick out like a sore thumb. Unlike Sophia, I'm not at all appropriately dressed for a cop's funeral reception. Unless you call a pair of leather pants and a torn black sweater appropriate, which, judging from the way Sophia and Go are eyeballing me, they don't. But I didn't exactly plan to come to Marco's funeral. It was more like a last-minute decision made after waking up late this morning and followed by a frantic search for clothes that were both clean and black. I'd rushed out the door after doing the best I could with the wardrobe I had, but my best hadn't been good enough. I'd arrived at the huge cathedral where Marco's funeral was being held 20 minutes late. And even though I'd done my best to stand in the shadows at the back of the church, which was filled to capacity with family, friends, and officers in dress uniform, Go still managed to spot me coming in late from where he stood at the front of the church. Spot and scowl at me across the yards of pews and people. Scowl at me then, just like he's scowling at me now. Like I'm somehow tainting his parents' stately living room with my messy gray and black hair and my punk rock clothes. I fight back the urge to remove my nose ring and maybe a few eyebrow hoops before I reach his family. They'd never approved of me, and I know it probably bought them all kinds of relief when Marco dumped me last year and got with Sophia, a nice Latina girl with a normal job as a college office administrator soon after. The only extra jewelry Sophia's wearing right now, beyond the 2 small studs in her ears, is a tasteful gold cross around her neck. It seems like removing the face jewelry is the least I can do, considering. But I don't want to give Go the satisfaction of scowling me into submission with his obvious disapproval. Tough girls don't let themselves get intimidated, I remind myself while squaring my shoulders, especially by geeks. Even handsome billionaire geeks who made the cover of magazines like Wired before reaching 30. Go might be a lot taller and richer than me, but I'd managed to get myself a lot farther than anyone who knew me when I got kicked out of Sophia's house would have thought. I remember the vow I'd made back when I first got my piercings. 2 eyebrow rings that Sophia's parents never would have approved of, punched right into my thickened skin. I'd promised myself back then to never again let anyone else influence how I looked, thought, or acted. I remind myself of that promise now, inwardly whispering, "You don't owe anyone anything."